Good morning, Clinton Central. Aubrey asked me to share this morning about OG and just my journey and some how we can make some things aligned within our school using various curriculums, since some of us have had trainings from different places. So the overview for this morning is going to be talking about the M.A. Rooney Foundation, how to find lesson plans on there, the new versus the retired lesson plans, a little bit about some phonemic awareness that you can use along with OG. And then at the end, will be tagged a video watching me do a short modified lesson. OG lessons were meant to be 45 minutes. Obviously, I'm not going to do a 45-minute lesson for you, but there will be a link to some of the basics just so that you can see a basic lesson being done. But I would encourage you at the end, I'll put a link of people in the school who have been OG trained, and I would really encourage you to go in and watch someone else do a lesson. I had an opportunity to do this in Hannah's Faulkner's room last year with Tammy Campbell, and it was really fun to watch how we all just kind of did it differently. But it was just really neat to see how it all flowed and worked together. So this is my short journey with OG. Not so short. This is my crew down below and a few extras. But one of my children, even in fourth grade, was still not reading. They were reading at about just below a first grade level. So my journey with OG really started when we were homeschooling. And I found a curriculum that was OG based, but not OG. That wasn't a term I was overly familiar with at that time. So when I became an aide at the school and Aubrey offered Tammy Campbell and I the opportunity to become OG trained, I was extremely interested. And for my particular child, using the OG materials, the OG system made a huge difference in how he was able to read and process information. He's also since been diagnosed with convergence insufficiency, which played a role as well. But at the time, I was not aware of that. So it's just been a neat journey for me to actually see a lot of these processes work. So within the M.A. Rooney Foundation website, I'm going to click on that for you. There's a lot of resources on here. So even if your training was not through Jamie Peevler or the M.A. Rooney Foundation, this is a website that is for teachers to use or people that have been trained in the OG community to use. There's also lots of wonderful Facebook groups. The Reading League, the International Dyslexia Association are great Facebook groups to be a part of too if you want to further your education. But if we go up here to the top, and we go over under Orton Gillingham, you will see there's all kinds of information, maybe even more than you want to know about. But there are actually five sets of lesson plans. So there's the kindergarten, the first grade, second grade, third grade plus, and then intermediate. Kindergarten and first grade lesson plans were written by Jamie Peevler. And so you're going to see a distinct difference between the first grade and the second, third, and the intermediate lessons on down. Those were written by somebody else. It's not that they're bad, it's just a very different style and format. So what I've noticed is when people are pulling off the lesson plans off the website or asking questions, they've now updated some of these lesson plans. So if I go in and click into the kindergarten lesson plans and I go down, you'll see the word new. And if you scroll all the way down, you will see retired OG lesson plans. The retired OG lesson plans are the original plans that Jamie Peevler wrote. It's not that there's anything wrong with the new lesson plans. I just don't know if the scope and sequences have been lined up. So OG wasn't, it's actually a preventative program. You go in, you test where your kids are, and you work with them with the skills that they need. So what the M.A. Rooney Foundation did several years ago is write lesson plans for school teachers to use, and they piloted them in the classroom. So there's a distinctive flow between kindergarten and first and second, and the order of sequence in which they work. So what I'm unsure about, and I haven't had the time to look at, is if that flow from kindergarten on for the new lesson plans hits all of those points, or if they've updated them all to that point. So it would not be beneficial for our kindergarten and first teachers to use, for kindergarten to use the new plans and first grade to use the retired plans, because there could be a gap between the two sets of plans, if that makes sense. So I would suggest, I really like the original plans. I use the retired lessons, but I think as long as everybody's using the same system, it should flow okay, if that makes sense. So if you go in and you look at, let's just look at some of these retired plans. And you go in and you can see on here a scope and sequence. So this is the pacing. There is a pacing for every set of OG lesson plans. So level 1 would be the fastest ones. It's your kids that maybe just need a little bit of help. They don't need to have every single lesson given to them. Level 2, if I scroll on down, you'll see that down here in lesson 36 on, some of the lessons are skipped because they may not need all the repetition that other kids would need. And then if you go to the third set of lesson plans on the right, you'll see that it hits every lesson. Again, in real OG, you're introducing the lessons and the sounds as needed or what goes along with your phonics curriculum. I'm just gonna scroll back really quick. I probably should have made a duplicate copy, so I'll do that. Sometimes my scrolling is not the best. So then the other, what I want to show you too on this website is that if I go into, let's say, first grade lesson plans, you'll notice when you go down, again, I'm just going to hit the retired ones because they are the ones I'm most familiar with. If other people have used the other ones and are familiar with them, they're welcome to let us know. I've not used so much of them. You see that there's these daily lesson plans. So here's some daily. And I'm just going to pull up a section. So on the daily, it's going to tell you what you need to have, what you need to do, pretty much word for word, which is great for the first few weeks that you're doing it. It's just a nice way to know you have everything you're doing, what sounds you're specifically working on. They're going to give you a list of all the cards that you need. I do want to talk a little bit about the blending drill in a minute. So if I don't, I'll try to tag that on at the end. It's going to tell you resources that you need, and they're going to be plugged in there. You probably don't want to print an entire year's worth of these types of lesson plans the daily, because it will fill an entire notebook. What you can do is go back to, if I go back in here to the first grade lesson plans, and I go down, again, I'm going to look into the retired, and I'm going to go into the weekly overview. I just want to show you what that looks like really quick. In the weekly overview, you have your Monday. So it'll tell you lesson 1.006, 1.007, and the entire week is laid out on one sheet of paper. If you forget what you're supposed to do, say you forget what a spelling rule or the syllabication is, if you go to the next page, it reminds you what all of those things are. So once you have a feel for the flow of the lesson and what happens in a lesson, it's an easy switch to make to the weekly lesson plans. I know some people print them off, and I know other people like to go download them to their Dropbox and pull up daily what they need. There are lots and lots of resources on this website. So I would just encourage you to play around on it. I'm going to show you one other item on here if I can get it pulled up. There's also a store on here. I know that some of us doing it through the Marion website and other various things, the cards have been different. The blending boards have been extremely different. There is a store. You'll see taxed and tax exempt. I'm not 100% sure if we can use the tax exempt, but if you go down, you will see that you can buy the entire deck. So when I was doing more than one group of kids, I think I had 40 kids at one point, I had a different deck of cards for each group that I used, because otherwise I couldn't keep track of who had done what, and it took too long to organize my cards each time. So I had a different set of cards for each group. You can also go down here and buy a blending board. And I would suggest that if you're switching room to room, and you're doing a lot of OG, or in my case, when I was tutoring and doing it here, I had 3 blending boards. One I kept at home, one I kept in my classroom, and one I kept in Hannah Faulkner's room because I was doing it a lot in there. So those are just supplemental materials. The cards you can actually print and not even pay for if you just want a couple extra deck of cards to use. Those are definitely, but you'll see your wall cards on there, all of those. There's just a plethora of resources. The other thing I wanted to talk about is with OG. In kindergarten and first, there is some phonemic awareness and phonics, but not a tons. And I've even noticed with the older kids that I work with in 5th and 6th grade, some of them still, they don't remember the alphabet anymore. They don't remember how to rhyme. So Hannah Faulkner also introduced Haggerty and Kilpatrick, the reading success, to me, and those have been instrumental in how I do my OG groups and my OG lessons. So the Haggerty takes about 10 to 12 minutes to do per time. I really like it. It hits the rhyming and all of that. It sometimes just takes a little more time than I have for a 30-minute lesson. So when I don't have time to do the Haggerty, or I feel like my kids already know how to rhyme, I'll switch to the Kilpatrick because it just does a lot of phonemic manipulation. So those sounds in the middle, it just does a lot of switching sounds around, what sounds different. And each section only takes 1 minute to do. So often I can pull in 2 or 3 minutes of Kilpatrick, where I wouldn't have the time to do that if I was using Haggerty. Kilpatrick is also great for any age group, but the kids really seem to like it because it's like a puzzle you have to solve. And in his manual, he gives you ideas on how to teach and formulate those, so that if a kid's stuck and can't manipulate a sound, some manipulatives you can use to help work on those. So here is a list of teachers in our building that have been trained in OG. Some have used them longer than others. As I said, when I first was OG trained with Tammy Campbell, we were in Hannah Faulkner's room, who was doing slant, but Hannah did a great job of making sure those lesson plans were aligned, so we were teaching the same concepts at the same time. And it was really fun to see how we were doing it differently. There's a component in the OG lesson plans where you have a word list, like a review word list and a new word list, where kids are supposed to read them. And this is really a great opportunity to be teaching vocabulary during OG, homonyms, homophones, digraphs. You put your list of words in 3 rows, and then the kids can tell you, you ask them questions about the words. Like, I see a word in list 1 that rhymes with he, or I see a word in list 2 that's a pronoun. And so this is where you can hit a little bit of quick grammar, because that repetition of reading for those kids is extremely important. So I hope that this was a little bit helpful with the website, and I hope that also you are able to go watch some other people do OG within our building. I think it's really beneficial to watch what they do. So thank you very much. And don't forget to look at the lesson attached to the end.